It's the night before the most important battle of Saul's life. The Philistine army is camped on one hill, Israel is camped on the other, and the king of Israel is absolutely terrified. He prays, no answer. He consults the sacred lots, silence. He seeks a prophet, nothing. Heaven has gone completely quiet. So the king of Israel, the same man who expelled all mediums and spiritists from the land, pulls a disguise over his royal robes, slips out into the darkness with two servants, and goes looking for a witch. Welcome to Forgotten Scriptures, where we uncover the Bible's most shocking, violent, and controversial stories. Today, we're diving into one of the strangest scenes in all of Scripture, the night King Saul visited the medium of Endor and asked her to bring a dead prophet back from the grave. This is a story of desperation, forbidden occultism, and a ghost encounter so terrifying that a hardened king collapses face down on the floor. If you're ready for the Bible's only recorded séance, hit that subscribe button. You're in Forgotten Scriptures. To understand why Saul ends up in a witch's house the night before battle, we need to understand how far he has fallen. Saul started as a humble young man from the smallest tribe in Israel, chosen by God, anointed by Samuel, empowered by the Spirit. He was impressive, he was chosen, he was God's man. But over the years, his disobedience accumulated. He offered an unlawful sacrifice instead of waiting for Samuel. He spared the enemy king God commanded him to destroy. He made reckless decisions that endangered his own army. Each act of disobedience pushed God further away and pushed Saul further into insecurity, jealousy, and paranoia. Samuel the prophet was the one voice that could reach Saul, rebuke him, redirect him. But Samuel is dead. The anchor is gone. And now the Philistines, Israel's most powerful enemy, have assembled a massive army at Shunem, and Saul looks at their camp and feels something he hasn't felt since before he was king: pure terror. He tries every legitimate channel. He prays to God, no answer. He consults the Urim, the sacred priestly stones used to seek divine guidance. Silence. He looks for a prophet who can hear from God. Nothing. The silence of God is not neutral, it's a verdict. God is not distracted. He is deliberately, intentionally not answering Saul because Saul has spent years refusing to listen to him. And that's when Saul makes the most revealing decision of his life. He tells his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium so I may go and inquire of her." Think about the irony. Saul himself had expelled all mediums and spiritists from Israel in obedience to God's law. Deuteronomy is explicit. Consulting the dead is an abomination, punishable by death. The king who enforced the law is now about to break it. The man who drove out the witches is now seeking one in the dark. His servants know of one, a woman in Endor. Endor is a risky destination. It's dangerously close to the Philistine lines. But Saul doesn't care about the risk anymore. He disguises himself, wraps his face, puts on ordinary clothes, and travels by night to find her. When he arrives, he tells her, "Consult a spirit for me and bring up for me the one I name." The woman is wary. She says, "Surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death?" She's afraid this is a sting operation, but Saul swears by God, using the name of the very God whose law he's breaking, that she won't be punished. She asks who to bring up. He says, "Bring up Samuel." What happens next shocks everyone in the room, including the medium herself. She expects a trick. She expects her familiar spirit, probably a demon, to put on a performance. Instead, something real comes up from the earth, and when she sees it, she screams. This is crucial. The medium, a professional deceiver, accustomed to fake encounters, cries out in shock. Whatever she sees, it's not what she expected. It's not something she summoned. It's not her usual act. She turns to the disguised figure and suddenly understands. "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." She recognized who she was dealing with either by supernatural revelation or by the sheer fact that this is the only king in Israel. But Saul tells her not to be afraid. He asks her to describe what she sees. She says, "I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth, an old man wearing a robe." And Saul knows immediately, it's Samuel. He bows down, face to the ground, the king of Israel prostrate before a dead prophet in a witch's house. And Samuel speaks, but it's not the comfort Saul was hoping for. Samuel opens with a rebuke. "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul pours out his desperation. The Philistines are attacking. God has turned away. He doesn't know what to do. He needs help. He needs one word of direction. Samuel's response is devastating. "Why do you consult me now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David." Then comes the prophecy that seals Saul's fate. "The Lord will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me." In one sentence, Samuel tells Saul that he has less than 24 hours to live.
Saul's body gives out. He falls full length on the ground, overwhelmed with fear, weakened by the fact that he hasn't eaten all day. The most powerful man in Israel is lying on the dirt floor of a medium's house, shaking. The woman shows him unexpected kindness. She urges him to eat, kills a fattened calf, bakes bread. Saul's servants urge him to rise. Eventually he eats, gets up, and walks out into the night, back to his camp, back to his army, back to a battle he already knows he will lose. The next day, exactly as Samuel predicted, the Philistines overrun Israel on Mount Gilboa. 3 of Saul's sons die in battle, including Jonathan, David's closest friend. Saul himself is critically wounded by archers. He begs his armor-bearer to run him through so the Philistines can't take him alive. The armor-bearer refuses, so Saul takes his own sword and falls on it. Later, scripture gives the verdict on why Saul died. Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord, and even consulted a medium for guidance, and did not inquire of the Lord. His death wasn't just the result of battle. It was the final chapter of a life that had systematically replaced obedience to God with self-reliance, superstition, and desperation. So what does this story teach us? First, God's silence is sometimes his answer. Saul interpreted God's silence as absence, but God wasn't absent. He was finished speaking to a man who had repeatedly refused to listen. When we find ourselves in silence before God, the first question to ask is not where is God, but have I been listening? Second, we always reach out to forbidden things when we stop trusting God. Saul had banned mediums because he knew they were wrong, but when God stopped answering, he ran to exactly what he had outlawed. Hypocrisy isn't just a character flaw, it's what happens when we know the right thing but stop trusting God enough to do it. Third, the medium scream tells us everything we need to know. She was a fraud used to performing tricks. When something real appeared, she panicked. The spirit world is not a performance or a game. Occult practices invite encounters with forces that are not under human control. The medium thought she was in charge of the meeting. She was not. Fourth, some prophecies you don't want to hear but need to. Samuel's words to Saul were brutal, final, and accurate. They confirmed that Saul had run out of time. But even in that darkness, there's a strange mercy. Saul knew the truth. He could spend his last night making peace with God. Whether he did, we don't know. But the truth was offered, even from the grave. And finally, Saul's story is a warning about what a life looks like when it drifts from God one compromise at a time. He didn't wake up one day and decide to visit a witch. He arrived at that decision through years of small disobediences, each one making the next one easier. The king who started chosen and anointed ended up face down in a witch's house, waiting to die. That drift is possible for anyone who stops treating obedience as non-negotiable. Saul walked out of that house into the last night of his life, carrying a prophecy he couldn't escape and a silence from God he had earned. Tomorrow would come, the battle would begin, and everything Samuel said would prove true. Next time on Forgotten Scriptures, we're following one of the most famous names in the Bible into his darkest moment, a man whose strength was legendary, whose weakness was catastrophic, and whose final act brought down an entire building full of people. You won't want to miss the real, raw story of Samson. If this story shook you, drop a comment. Do you think the real Samuel actually appeared, or was it a demon impersonating him? What does this story say about God's silence in your own life? Hit that subscribe button. This is Forgotten Scriptures, where the Bible's darkest stories come to light.